Are you tired of tech tools that promise to fix everything but end up complicating your life or just aren't being used? It seems like every week there's a new gadget or software that's supposed to be the next big thing for boosting business efficiency. Yet more often than not, they just add to the pile of underused, overhyped tech, gathering digital dust. So why is it so hard to find technology that actually works for you? Well, I'm going to discuss this with Abby Anderson, who's legendary for seamlessly integrating the right tech into the operations of her bookkeeping practice. Her usage of technology has not just streamlined her firm, they've propelled it into rapid growth while freeing up Abby's time. As a result, she's recently founded a software business of her own called iAmy that automates data extraction for bookkeeping. So in this episode, we'll dive into the process of technology selection and overcome the overwhelm. We'll explore her personal experiences with the tech that's just transformed her operations and how she's overcome the common obstacles to successful adoption. Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by the amazing Abby Anderson. Welcome, Abby.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Well, let's dive right in. Your approach to merging technology into your bookkeeping practice has really set you apart. So take me back to what initially inspired you to integrate those two worlds.
I've always loved tech, gadgets, ever since I was a kid. You know, from the first time that I ever had technology, from the Atari days to Amstrad and Commodore and Acorn, right through to now. I've literally got to have every gadget. I need to understand how efficient it can make my life. That is what technology is really meant to be doing. It's meant to be enhancing and making us more efficient because, you know, we're in a rat race most of the day and we want to be able to get the best out of our day. So technology has definitely been one that I've always gone to.
Fantastic. And then how did you end up then in kind of the bookkeeping industry specifically?
So when I first left college, I actually was computer programming. I did computer programming. Then I went into quality assurance and worked for the Ministry of Defence. And then in my 20s, I moved to Essex, and they didn't need anybody like me at that point for quality and Ministry of Defence. So I then went, right, I need to go and do AAT. So I put myself through AAT, went into bookkeeping, accounting, worked up in some big firms in London. Then I had a family, and then I decided to set my own business up 11 years ago.
Nice. And so I guess you brought your love of the technology side into what you were doing with bookkeeping. How early on was that something that right from the beginning that you wanted to make sure that you were using the most cutting edge tech, and what was your experience of that?
Yeah, so I was brought up, as I say, in my career on Sage Desktop, and I absolutely loved it. Then when they went into the cloud, I didn't really like the software. So I thought, right, let's try and see if I can find something else. Books was always a thing. I didn't like that either. Now, Xero came out, I think, in the UK, 2008. So it was in very, very young, early stages when I first took on Xero. And I thought, well, this is very easy. And with me, it's about clicks. I don't know about anybody else, but if I have to click more than a few times to get where I need to get to, for me, that's a bit of a turn off.
Mm-hmm.
But with Xero, it really enhanced where I was going. It's more time efficient. I then set my practice up. And then obviously I was on Excel. I absolutely love Excel. But I always think, I wonder if a piece of tech's out there that would help with this situation. And then I go Google. Use Google all the time to find out if there's a piece of software that would do streamlining of my practice. One phenomenal piece of software that I've just installed probably in the last 18 months is Client Engager.
Oh, yeah.
So, I've used all the other packages like Accountancy Manager and Center and used Pixie, and they all had their good things about what they did, but it wasn't ticking all my boxes that I needed, and especially for a bookkeeping practice. Because, there are differences between bookkeeping and accountancy. There's certain things that we don't obviously need. So I then went to Client Engager, and it completely changed the way that we've worked,
Mm-hmm.
from proposals to workflows, from my staff being able to log in and see what their day-to-day stuff is, what the deadlines are. We can send emails and reminders on automation. Everything is so simplistic.
Nice.
And to me, it just gelled so well, and it has saved us so much time.
That's really powerful. And for those that don't know, so Client Engager is a essentially a practice management system, is kind of how it's known in the accounting and bookkeeping industries, and particularly my experience of Client Engager and having met clients of theirs and also the founders, is that they've gone for a very, as you say, sort of simple to use, or fast to use, but it doesn't try to be everything. And particularly it's focused on the bookkeeping market, and particularly at that low cost end of the market. And in my experience of building software businesses, what tends to happen is you start there and you keep on adding features, which essentially over time you disrupt the rest of the market to bring other people in. They can make it like solve a particular need for a particular group of clients, and then over time add the features and build it so that it becomes a really good fit. What's in the tech world product market fit. But then, as written about in the book, The Innovator's Dilemma and the Innovator's Solution by Clayton M. Christensen, that talks about how actually any industry is constantly being disrupted because you've got these products, these businesses that start in one place, but it's in their interest to erode clients from the big players. And so I think that's a really powerful way and interesting thing to look at. It's just the strategy of any business like that. But I think as it relates to tech, one of the challenges it means for business owners who are looking at technology is, what technology should I be using, given that the tech landscape is constantly evolving? There's new tools coming on all the time. Tools that you have been using have added functionality that you may or may not be making use of. And then, of course, you've got some tools either die and are shelved and whatever, or they're bought, and sometimes once they've been bought, it kind of dies a death. Skype being an example, where Skype started off as the leading player in voice over IP, were absolutely smashing it, bought by Microsoft, basically no development done to it, and it's completely died a death. Zoom's then been able to take a big part of that share, and so on. So and that's a challenge, right? For most business leaders, particularly those that are less geeky for the tech, it can be pretty overwhelming. So how do you stay ahead and ensure that the tools that you're adopting are truly beneficial and not just the latest fad?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I don't get the overwhelm because I absolutely love tech. I think it runs in my blood. But for those people that actually go on and think, I don't know which one to choose, I don't know which one is going to suit my practice, you have to ask yourself the question, what are your future goals? Where am I in my current stage? Am I just starting up? Have I been doing it for a couple of years? Have I got a mature practice? One size does not fit all. And so it's quite difficult for people to go, well, which one's best suited for me? And it does take a lot of time. You said earlier, appadvisoryplus.com, which is by Will Farnell, is a starting block to stop the overwhelm, to actually go in and actually have a look to see what one would be better suited for your practice. But for me, I always keep up to date. I spend probably about an hour, maximum 2 a day, per day, just looking at apps.
Wow.
Because I am so invested in the technology world and how much it's changed even in 12 months. So for instance, you're adding advisory services to your business. So for us, it would be like using either Fathom or Pulse or Expert or
Clarity.
There's all sorts of different ones out there. So first of all, I go to Captera and I do a comparison, because you can actually tick the boxes in there and do compare. And then I drill down again even more, asking myself further and further questions about what I really want this to do. And then if I decide, it's not giving me the answer, but I'm going to go and try it. So I go and do my trial, which is either 7, 14, or even sometimes 30 days. Then I go and trial it. And I only spend about half an hour, because that normally gives me the insights of what I actually do need. And that's it. I've made my decision. But it's the questions. The questions are the core thing. It's knowing where you are in your journey and where you're going.
I love that. I think that there's a couple of things that really stand out to me there when I'm thinking about practices that I've worked with, business leaders, where particularly where they don't love this, and the idea of, for them, the idea of spending an hour or two per day looking and playing with technology would be their idea of hell. I think
Yes,
the
exactly.
interesting outcome for them as a result of what you just said, I think, is firstly getting clear on what's the business problem that you want solved through technology. Because
Yes.
I see a lot of people going to events and so on, and they're just going and they look at a load of technology and then come away overwhelmed,
Yeah.
rather than saying, as you were saying there, right, I want to add advisory. Now let me go look at the technology support advisory. Or I know that we're not as efficient as we should be on payroll. Let me now go look at what does best practice payroll look like and what are the
Yeah.
technology support it and so on. So I
Yeah.
think that's the first thing to overcoming that overwhelm that I take from what you've said is it needs to be the other way around. Start with the problem, even for a IT
Yeah.
geek such as yourself, like you start with the problem and then go a Googling.
Yeah.
However, the other thing I take from it is you love this stuff. You like doing the Googling and seeing the different tools and having a play with them and doing the free
Mhm.
trials and, you know, looking at the decks and the videos and having calls with them and so on. If that's not you as a business leader, if you're thinking, I'm just not like Abby, there's no way that I'd want to spend that amount of time doing
Mm.
it, then the question is, so who should that be in your organization? Because if you
Yes.
haven't got that person, then you will fall behind. You
Yeah.
will continually find that you'll make one big leap because you had to, maybe because
Mm.
COVID forced you to be paperless, or maybe you've had some other big problem or a client that had a particular need. So you've had to come kicking and screaming into the
Mm.
21st century and implement something, but then you'll stop because you
Yeah.
haven't got anyone in your business that's asking that question. What's our biggest problem? What technology exists to solve it? How do those technologies compare? Having a play with them and testing them out, then making a decision, coming to a conclusion and making a decision on it, then testing it further with a pilot group in the organization and then rolling out further. All of
Mm.
those things that in your case, Abby, you're like, oh, that sounds like Christmas, right? You do that. You do that when you're meant to be on holiday, right? But for
Yeah.
many business leaders, they wouldn't want to do that. So who?
Yeah, and I think that's a valid question as well, because sometimes, especially when if you're a startup or a sole practitioner doing bookkeeping on your own, you're the only one person that can only go and do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the chicken and the egg. It's like I need the software to do my business, but I need the business to get my cash flow in order to get the software. But I haven't got any time to do anything else. So it's this vicious circle that people, when you're starting out, actually has.
And that goes for so many areas, right? There's areas of the business like sales or social media or whatever, the finances, where there are business owners, when they first start out, they haven't got any resources. And therefore, it's one of those, yeah, I'm really sorry, you do have to do it.
Mm.
But as you grow, you then have to look at those activities that you don't enjoy, don't come naturally to, and so on, and make sure that you've got someone that you can hold responsible for filling that gap for you. And so it might be, in this case, that technology piece. I suppose in
Mm.
the early days, the things that I found useful is peers, going and talking to other people that have
Yeah.
similar businesses and look
Yeah.
at what are they already using, and using that as a fair
Yeah.
starting point to go, if all else fails, I'm going with that technology stack, that set
Yeah.
of technologies that they've put together to do their business. I'll do something similar to that. And of course, you go to most industry events, and that's a big part of what they're sharing on panels and so on is, oh yeah, we
Mm.
use this and we use that and da da da
Mm.
da, and mention various tools even in this podcast. So you're right that when you first start, you don't have that as an option. But I see so many businesses as they grow failing to make sure that that's an area that's
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah.
And
And
yet
it's because it's a growing and it's evolving every
mm,
year,
true.
So sometimes even if a piece of software suits you right now, will it suit you in another 12 months
Yeah,
to 2 years,
quite right.
depending? And it's understanding and knowing what's on their roadmap for new features or new expansion or new things that need to be added. Are they listening to the community?
Yeah, indeed. And the impact when you get it right can be huge, right? Is there a story where a particular technology implementation significantly boosted either efficiency or client outcomes?
I've got this comparison between Dex Prepare is brilliant, right? But when you're starting out or when you're very small, or even if you're a couple of years into it, actually justifying the cost sometimes is just too far outreached.
Okay.
And it's very rich, which means sometimes for a bookkeeper, they don't need to use all the features. They just need to be able to extract the data. So it's like whether it's invoices, purchase invoices, receipts, or whether it's bank statements. Dex to prepare, it's a Swiss Army knife. When you use a Swiss Army knife, you probably don't utilize all of the things on there. And it's the same when then you go to the other end of the spectrum with HubDoc. You know, it's free with Xero, which is great if the thing worked. And it does work, but it only works sometimes. Now, if you're trying to run an efficient practice, you can't work on software that works sometimes. It has to work every time, otherwise it's not having it. And so this is a place in the market at the moment that just has this gap. We just want to do one thing really well, which is extract data, whether it's from bank statements or whether it's from purchase invoices or receipts. And that's why we created iAmy, which we are in beta testing stage at the moment. Absolutely amazing feedback from our beta testers so far. I've got more booked in over the next couple of weeks, which has been great. So yeah, we'll be hopefully launching early part of next year. But again, it's because we needed to fill a gap that's the biggest bugbear in a bookkeeping practice, and that's the data entry. It's so time consuming and obviously financial zapping. You know, it doesn't need to be. You can actually use pieces of software to make your life much easier for a fraction of the cost. So if you say, for instance, your time is, let's say, £30-40 an hour, if not more, and you spend 5 hours doing data entry, why not use a piece of software that costs the same amount? Because you're not making any difference in money. But if you think about how much software is actually out there, and if it can help you, why not put that investment into something that then you can actually utilize your time better? It's about working smarter, not harder. And I keep hearing that phrase over and over again, but it is. And that's why I think when people are very, not tech phobe, I don't like using that phrase, but when they're tech adverse, they're not wanting to venture down it, or they feel a bit, oh, I don't know, will it work? And then it's also about cybersecurity and GDPR and everything else that comes into this. You know, it's not very hard now to find out whether or not they're accredited or not, these pieces of software. But when you actually find these pieces of software that's going to actually enhance you and your business and your practice and gives you the time, then it's definitely advisable to actually go down, because it's not going away. Tech is not going away. It's only going to get even better, in my opinion.
Agreed. And yet I often see in businesses, particularly those that are perhaps less tech savvy or less, frankly, geeky about this, is their reluctance to spend money on it, because it's more obvious spending when you're having to write the check or enter the card details or whatever for a software subscription than it is for people cost. And so the risk is that you go, oh, well, I can't possibly spend £3,000, £10,000 a year on this piece of technology. That's so much money. And yet the reality is, across a business of, let's say, 10 plus people, some of those pieces of technology could be saving you from hiring employee number 11 or beyond, right? And each one of those people costs is easily 50k plus once you include all the other costs, not just their salary, but their management costs and training and recruitment and all those sorts of things. So often that software should be giving you 5 to 10 times return on investment, even at small scale, before you're growing really big. But I think part of it is that people hold back from making that investment because they don't truly believe that the technology and the promise of that technology will deliver as expected. And particularly because they've had bad experiences of investing in technology and then haven't done anything with it, or have tried to implement it or train it or whatever, but the team don't use it or whatever. How have you navigated that challenge, particularly as you've grown and, you know, built your business and got more of a team around you?
It's definitely been in stages, and it's always been around a problem. So, okay, this is a problem. How do we solve it? Or how do we make it more efficient in our practice so that it doesn't become a problem and actually becomes more of an efficient, streamlined process? What can we do to make it more efficient? As I say, I was using Accountancy Manager, and then I went to Center, and then that didn't work really for me. And then I used Pixie, and then My ex-business partner mentioned to me, she went, Abby, Client Engager, you've got to try this. And it had only been out for a couple of months and I hadn't seen it, which is unusual for me because I'm usually quite hot on my tech. And I was like, okay, let's give it a go. So I went on, and bearing in mind, this was when I was on holiday.
God, it might
And
be.
yeah, well,
I predicted it earlier.
yes, you did. So on the Wednesday, she said, oh, this one's a really good one. You want to try it? So I said, okay, fine. So I went on it and I was in the garden on my sun lounger with my laptop. And I thought, oh, I'll do a bit of tech trial. Well, Thursday and Friday, I spent 2 days uploading into the templates that they have, importing all of the clients and the data and linking it to Company's House and da. So when I came back to work on Monday, everything was all there ready. Workflows, it's so user friendly. It was just easy. And so even though I took a couple of days out of my holiday to do it, it was less time for worrying and it was so user friendly.
One thing I take from that is that you put that investment of time in to sort out data migration and so on, so that you're able to cut over to the new way of working, right? Like you didn't do it a little piecemeal. You worked out actually what needs to be in place in terms of client data and workflows and so on, so that I can move across.
Yeah.
How did you then make it easy for your team to do that? Because that's one of the challenges is you've spent all that time playing around and you go, oh, this is so easy and so on. Yeah. And my experience has been, it doesn't matter how easy a piece of software is. You know, Xero is often talked about as being beautiful accounting software is their phrase. And it's very user friendly. And yet team members still need a little bit of support. How did you make sure that the team got on board with, this is how we're now going to work and as a result, and use it consistently?
So I'm one for recording my screen. I suppose it's almost like a very small training manual. So as I'm doing it, I'm building that library of videos.
Nice.
Now we've got a bank of videos for every single client that we've got because every client's different, the way that we do some processing. And so in theory, it's like a flow. So if we have a new member of staff come on board and I go, right, I'm going to give you this client to do. Here are all the videos. They've got them there to refer back to time and time and time again. And I only did it, within 10, 15 minutes, that video perhaps. And it's only did it once. And so therefore, they've always got that. So the same as with any technology. I can do a quick overview about where you can find things. So we're building the processes as we go. So if that staff member left and another member came on, then they've got a bank of videos again. So for me, that's just easy, and it becomes a bit of a habit where I just record my screen while I'm doing it.
Nice.
I don't know if anyone else probably thinks, oh, that's a different way of doing stuff, but it is. It just helps me transcribe it all.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a webinar that I ran with Amanda C. Watts recently.
Oh, yeah.
I think she was in episode 127 of the podcast, and we did this webinar together called Simple Scales, which I think people can get at airmanual.link/simple scales, all one word, lowercase, in which she asked me to essentially share, like, how do you get stuff out of your brain? How do you get the process documented? And I basically shared, like, here's 3 ways. And the first one was recording it to video, which I think I described as the quick and easy way. And then I shared 2 other ways, which are even faster and even better. So I think you'd like that. But it comes at one of the challenges that I often find with the videoing is it's great because it's quick and easy. But then if you want to edit it or change it, that's the painful bit, right? Is then, like, do you now re-record it? Do you edit that video? Do you then get someone else to re-record it? And so on. And so in that webinar, I talk about some of the solutions. For you, I'm conscious that you must be evolving your processes and evolving your use of technology and so on all the time. Are there any particular ways in which you've changed bookkeeping activities and how you're leveraging technology on the bookkeeping side, perhaps leveraging AI or other automations to make that super fast?
So with the advisory service that we've got, we do a lot of management reporting, but we also, on the back of those, I do review meetings. I want to make sure that my clients fully understand what I'm giving them rather than just, here you go, here's your report and see you next month. I want to sit down and go through it. So the advisory side comes from the management reporting. Now, the management reporting software that we use is Fathom at the moment. We did use Futurely, and then they got bought out by Sage. And since it's gone into Sage, they've changed a hell of a lot of stuff, and I'm not liking it. So that's why I jumped ship. I've had a trial of Expert and I've had a trial of Pulse. And although they give very different features of very similar things, for me, I wanted to have management reporting. And Fathom HQ is the reporting that we use. What I would love to see in any of these kinds of pieces of software is an AI capability where they can actually write commentary. So you're not having to think about it. Because again, even though we have to sense check it, which is what we would do anyway, to think about how you put it into from numbers to words about yes, this is good, no, this is not, we're not on target, real good commentary. There isn't anything that I've found at the moment. I've improvised. Now, I've obviously taken out all of my clients' confidential information, not so much the numbers, it's just their details. And I've put them into ChatGPT and I've requested them to do a commentary on these figures. And it was amazing. It fixed that problem. So whereas it probably would have taken me to review the document and then do the commentary for an hour, probably took me no more than about 15, 20 minutes because I sense checked it, but I also reviewed the document, but in less time because of the commentary. Because that's what really gets me. I mean, give me numbers all day long, but when it comes to words, it's quite difficult sometimes.
Yeah, so as a result, when you look at the numbers, you're able to see the trends, you're able to see the issues, but then converting that into a set of themes and discussion points and explaining those and having the examples, that's then the hard bit for you. Therefore, having a process where part of it is to then get this data in a way that's safe and doesn't cause problems with data privacy, etc., allows you to get a good starting point that you can then edit and review and make sure it's accurate based on what you're seeing, which I can see it's powerful. Is that something that you've then built into a process that now your team do? Or is that something currently that only you do?
So it's currently what I only do at the moment. My management accountant employee, she has started using it, but it's something that I love. I love to do that bit. I don't know. I don't want to deal with the everyday stuff. But when I'm looking at my clients, because I'm obviously doing the review meetings, I mean, I'm in quite a lot of Zooms every month. And those review meetings are quite crucial. And some of the bigger clients want more than one a month because they've got budgets and targets, especially for sales teams. And so at the end of the month, we'll have a Zoom, and then halfway through the month, we'll have a Zoom. And that purely is because we want to be able to see if they're on target so far for that month. Are we not? And if they're not, they need to pull their socks up for the last 2 weeks. That to me is more crucial than anything. They need those figures straight away. So I need to have that at my fingertips. I don't want to be spending hours and hours doing it. I could be going on to another client's review meeting and being more effective in that sense. So by finding software that actually ticks all my boxes is crucial. But at the same time, my staff are always giving me feedback saying, it would be really good if it could do this, or it would be really good if you could find a piece of tech that does that. And then I'm on a mission. But then I'm also asking my staff, because we have weekly team meetings. And I ask them, what is it that's holding you back? Tell me what's your bugbear at the moment? Because that to me is the feedback I need to make their life easier, for our practice to run more efficiently, to get the figures that I need in order to do my review meetings. So it's a big old circle. So I'm always asking for feedback, always.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's something that any business needs to have that somewhere, having that process, having that resource dedicated to looking at how can we be more efficient, getting feedback from the people in the business. One of the crazy things is with my background in consulting, often my job as a consultant is go speak to a load of the team, find out what their biggest frustrations are, synthesize that into some big themes and priorities and play that back to leadership. And then get them to resource it and actually do something about it because I'm able to prove the impact. Yet That's something that should be just going on all the time in an organization, particularly when it relates to technology. There are other areas too, but particularly technology, where we all know that the opportunities are changing all the time, and particularly in certain industries, they're moving faster than others. Accounting and bookkeeping is one that's had a big shift in the last 10 years. That's where the opportunity is. That's where the gains are made, where the profit margins are, where the opportunities for adding more value to clients are, by reducing the amount of time you spend on low value work, by automating and so on. So I think that's awesome. Looking forward, what's one technology perhaps on the horizon that you think could really revolutionize efficiency, perhaps in the bookkeeping practice or the broader service sector?
I think what's really prevalent at the moment is the payment solutions that are coming out. You've got Apron that have come from nowhere to somewhere, and then you've got Teleroo, and Adfin. Adfin, yeah, I'm definitely into the Adfin at the moment, where its payment solutions just seem to be predominant in the field at the moment. And I think that's going to revolutionize a lot of things. Payment solutions is probably one of the biggest bugbears, as well as data entry. We haven't got any kind of payment solution in place. We're definitely going down the Adfin route from what my staff have been telling me. So yeah, I think that's our next sort of port of call to see, okay, is it a problem that we've got at the moment that we need solving? That was a question that we asked. The other one was, how much change will it actually impact our clients because of the way we do things? How much of that impact will change our way of doing things, like processes that we need to update and all that kind of stuff that goes into it? So there's a lot to think about when there's one problem. What ripple effect does it have with everything else that you've got in your practice and clients? So there's a lot. Again, it's all about the questions. And I'm literally like the question queen, as people always say to me. You're always asking questions. I said, yeah, well, I don't care. That's how I learn. But if you don't ask the right question, you're never going to know the answer. I'm always asking the questions.
Nice. Love that. Fantastic. We're now going to move on to some quick fire questions. Let's start off with, what one thing causes most stress for you?
Not enough hours in the day.
What's your preference? Work out the right process, then find the technology, or find the technology and then sort out the process?
Process, then tech.
What's the number one factor for successful implementation of a new technology?
It's got to be easy to use.
What book or podcast has been most pivotal for you in changing your life for the better?
Oh my God, there's too many to even say. Minimal Viable Launch.
And what's one thing that you want business leaders to take from this episode?
Make sure you ask yourself the right questions.
Love it. Fantastic. Great work, Abby. I'm going to make sure on the show notes that we link to your profile on LinkedIn. We'll also link to your website of your accountancy and bookkeeping businesses, rocksolidacc.com, I believe, and also the website for your new software business, iamy.io, where we'll link to that as well, which people should check out to learn more about what you're doing in the space of creating document capture and data extraction for bookkeepers. Anything else we should link to in the show notes?
No, I think that's pretty much it. You can find me pretty much on LinkedIn most of the time. So yeah, thanks, Alexis. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And one other links that I'll make sure I include in the show notes, because I mentioned it earlier in the episode, is that if you want to help your team to embrace technology and use it consistently, then you're going to need to get processes documented, as a minimum recorded as a video. Although I mentioned that in the webinar that I ran with Amanda C. Watts, there's some ways in which you can get processes documented super fast and make them really easy to edit, review, and not become a bit of a mess. Because one of the things that I know that some people have experienced when they do lots of videos is it becomes a mess and they struggle with the scaling. So if you want to see the recording of that webinar, which goes into that in detail, go to airmanual.link/simple scales. But otherwise, thank you so much, Abby, for joining me, and to everyone else, thanks so much for listening. If you found this episode useful, please do share it on social media and tag me and Abby in. We'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.